Imagine holding a smooth, heavy stone right in the palm of your hand.
Okay, setting the scene right away. I like it.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It smells faintly of rotting bananas.
Oh,
Right.
gross.
And the scent is like getting stronger by the second. It's turning from sweet to just intensely pungent.
Yeah, that sickly sweet smell.
Exactly. And, with absolute terrifying certainty that if that smell turns fully to rot, your only lifeline out of a burning, demon-infested city will just vanish forever.
That is quite the image.
You are standing in an alleyway slick with blood. The sky above you is literally tearing open with apocalyptic fury, and your salvation is tethered to the decay rate of a tropical fruit.
It's absurd, but that's the reality of it.
It really is. So welcome to our fire, fellow traveler. Take a seat by the hearth, pull your cloak tight against the chill of the unknown, and let us dive deep into the chronicles of the Shattered Veil tonight.
It is so good to be here by the fire again.
We are here to weave a tale drawn from the bleeding edge of the recent past, specifically those catastrophic events that unfolded at the very end of the Iron Crown siege.
Right, and that immediate, just chaotic dawn that followed in the city of Ashwillow.
The stakes here, they are nothing less than the survival of the material plane. The end of days clock is ticking with a deafening rhythm,
The shadow of the great demon Gormak is really stretching across the world at this point.
Yeah, and this band of deeply traumatized, battered heroes has just managed to strike a devastating blow against one of his greatest generals.
A massive victory, but at such a cost.
So our mission tonight, as we turn the pages of these old notes and character ledgers, is to really examine the fall of that fortress.
The bloody fracturing of a pirate metropolis.
Exactly. And the baffling, desperate choices made by those who carry the purple glow of prophecy on their skin. And to help me decipher the hidden architecture behind all this spellcraft and sword swings, I am joined, as always, by a fellow traveling sage, a keeper of the old lore.
It is a profound privilege to share the warmth of this fire with you and, of course, with our listener sitting across from us.
We have so much to unpack tonight.
We really do. The chronicles we are examining tonight are incredibly dense. I mean, we are not simply reading a list of battle maneuvers or tallying the fallen here.
No, not at all.
We are dissecting an agonizing study of psychological endurance. We are looking at a party of individuals marked by a cosmic destiny they barely even understand.
Which is terrifying in itself.
Right. And they're being stretched to the absolute limits of their moral frameworks and their physical biology.
Yeah, like what happens to the mortal mind when the apocalypse is no longer a theoretical text in library, but a roaring fire in the streets outside your door?
That is exactly what we are here to explore.
And that brings me to the core question. I want you, our listener, to keep firmly planted in your mind as we journey through this epic tonight. Picture yourself in their boots.
Put yourself right there in the ash and the blood.
When the world is ending, and you have been beaten to the absolute brink of death. I mean, your armor is cracked. Your magical reserves are completely depleted.
Muscles just screaming with lactic acid.
Pure exhaustion. Do you retreat into the shadows to lick your wounds? Or do you step back out into a burning, rioting city to turn the tide of a street war?
It's the ultimate test of heroism, or maybe survivalism.
To understand that choice, we first have to understand the crucible they just survived. Let's set the scene. We are deep underground in the ritual chamber suspended directly over a bubbling lava lake beneath the Iron Crown fortress.
A terrifying location.
But the traveler, they can't see the lava. They cannot see anything.
No, because the chamber's been swallowed entirely by a spell.
Right. Cast by Atenimus, the half-elf warlock, it is a magical darkness, and they are fighting a being known as the Hand of Gormak.
A gargantuan construct of a Goliath.
Just glowing with this sickly, corrupting purple light. The climax of this horrific melee hinges on Zora, the high elf sorcerer.
Because she is caught in the violent throes of a wild magic surge.
Yeah, she unleashes a maximized lightning bolt that just tears through the absolute blackness.
The collision of her raw, surging magic with the Goliath's purple energy results in what the arcane scholars term a terminal burst.
The Hand of Gormak literally shatters into a catastrophic explosion of kinetic and magical force. I mean, walk us through the physical reality of this moment. What is a terminal burst, really?
Well, we have to strip away the poetic language of the chronicles for a moment and look at the terrifying physics of arcane combat.
Okay, lay it on us.
Magical darkness, like the one conjured by Atenimus, is not merely the absence of a light source. It is an active, aggressive suppression of photons.
So it's pushing back against light.
Exactly. It is a sensory deprivation tank built out of shadows, thick enough to suffocate your spatial awareness.
So fighting a massive mechanized Goliath in that environment means relying entirely on sound, right?
Sound, the shifting of air currents, and pure instinct. Now introduce Zora's wild magic surge. Magic in this universe is not a sterile science.
No, wild magic is the raw, unfiltered chaos of creation.
Right. When she casts a maximized lightning bolt, she is forcing her central nervous system to act as a conduit for millions of volts of arcane electricity.
That sounds lethal just to cast.
It nearly is. A terminal burst occurs when two incompatible hyperdense magical frequencies collide. In this case, Zora's raw elemental surge and the corrupted abyssal purple energy animating the Goliath.
They collide and fail to synthesize.
Exactly. The resulting explosion isn't just concussive, it is a shockwave of localized reality unraveling.
So it's not just a bomb going off, it's the fabric of the room momentarily snapping back like a broken rubber band.
That's a great way to put it.
And the toll this takes on the Fellowship is staggering. Let's look at the notes here on the aftermath. Welsies, the Dwarven Paladin, is the vanguard.
Right in the thick of it.
He is clad in masterfully fitted adamantium plate armor. Now, for those who aren't familiar with Dwarven metallurgy, adamantium is practically indestructible.
It absorbs massive amounts of kinetic energy.
Right. It is etched with runes of protection, and Welsies himself is brimming with the divine resilience of his god, Hanseath. Yet the lore states that the shockwave of this terminal burst pushes him to the absolute precipice of death.
It does.
If his armor is indestructible, what is happening to his body inside it?
That is the cruel irony of heavy armor against concussive arcane force. The adamantium plate does not shatter. No, it maintains its structural integrity perfectly.
Okay.
But physics demands that the energy of the explosion must go somewhere. The sheer blunt force of the terminal burst hits the armor, and while the metal holds, the kinetic shockwave travels directly through the plating.
Oh no, right into Welsies.
Directly into his skeletal structure. We are talking about massive internal trauma. Organs, bruising against the rib cage, microfractures along the spine.
A severe concussive shock to the brain.
His spirit, sustained by his divine oath, is literally the only thing keeping his heart beating in that moment. He is a walking casualty.
And right next to him is Aaron, the human ranger. Now, Aaron doesn't wear adamantium. He relies on mobility.
He is a survivalist, a man built for long-haul endurance.
The chronicles describe him standing there, hacking and gasping, his hands braced on his knees, operating on less than a tenth of his physical strength.
His adrenal glands must be completely tapped out.
Totally.
Aaron is experiencing what we might call catastrophic physiological failure. Rangers operate on a knife edge of stamina and hyper-awareness.
Right, to survive a fight with a demonic construct in pitch darkness.
Aaron's body has been pumping adrenaline and cortisol at lethal levels just to keep his reaction time sharp enough to avoid getting crushed.
So when the terminal burst detonates, the sudden vacuum of combat stimulus causes an immediate endocrine crash.
Exactly. His muscles are flooded with lactic acid. His lungs are searing from inhaling pulverized stone and ozone. He's barely capable of putting one foot in front of the other.
But the worst of it honestly falls on Zora herself. She doesn't cast this reality-bending spell, strike a heroic pose, and walk away.
Far from it.
The notes are brutal here. She collapses. She is completely unconscious, bleeding out on the stone floor. What breaks inside a sorcerer when they push a wild magic surge to that absolute limit?
Well, you have to remember, a sorcerer's body is the instrument of their magic, unlike a wizard who uses formulas and components.
Right, it's inherent.
When Zora forces her mind to channel a maximized surge, she is essentially trying to push a raging river through a delicate glass straw.
Oh, wow. That visual.
The neural pathways in her brain are overloaded, the synesthesia of pain, the sheer thermal heat of the lightning manifesting from her own vital energy.
It causes her nervous system to initiate an emergency shutdown.
Exactly, to prevent spontaneous combustion. She is dying not from an enemy blade, but from the violent backlash of her own miraculous power.
Which paints a horrifying picture. I mean, they are deep in the bowels of an enemy fortress. The terminal burst was undoubtedly loud enough to wake the dead.
Every pirate defender in the Iron Crown is currently sprinting toward the ritual chamber with drawn steel.
The vanguard is internally bleeding. The ranger is paralyzed by exhaustion, and the primary spellcaster is in a coma on the floor.
They need an escape strategy immediately.
And this brings us to the action of the warlock Atenemus. The remaining conscious members haul Zora's limp body away from the lava abyss.
Stabilizing her just enough so she doesn't expire on the spot.
But they know they cannot fight their way out. So Atenemus makes a choice. A terrifying tactical choice.
He reaches into the abyssal void.
He utilizes his dark connections and summons a ravening greater demon directly into the center of the fortress hall to cover their retreat.
He does.
Hold on. I need to stop the narrative right here and push back on this.
By all means, it is a deeply controversial maneuver.
Controversial is putting it mildly. I mean, the entire premise of their quest, the whole reason they are covered in this purple glow of prophecy, is to stop the apocalypse. The apocalypse is being brought about by demons. Gormak is a demon lord. And Atenemus' solution to escaping a pirate garrison is to tear a hole in reality and invite a greater demon, an apex predator of the abyss, into the material plane. How does that not make him the villain of this chapter? By leaving an abyssal horror to rampage through the fortress, haven't they just replaced one apocalyptic threat with another for the civilian population of Ashwillow above?
Your outrage is exactly the reaction a civilized mind should have. It is a horrific violation of arcane ethics.
Thank you.
But to understand it, we must step out of the realm of ethics and into the brutal mathematics of survival. Atenemus is a half-elf warlock.
Okay, right.
His magic is not born of study like a wizard, nor is it inherent like a sorcerer. It is a transaction.
He is bound to a patron.
A lesser demon who acts as a sinister, whispering puppet master. Atenemus is, by his very nature and history, a gambler. He evaluates odds.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
In that chamber, the odds of survival against 100 rushing pirates are 0. The odds of surviving if he summons a demon to distract the pirates, perhaps 10%. He takes the bet.
But the collateral damage. A greater demon doesn't just check the pirates' IDs and let the heroes pass. It slaughters indiscriminately.
Yes, it does. And this is the crux of the party's moral degradation. We are witnessing the death of idealism here.
The death of idealism. Wow.
Earlier in their journey, perhaps in the desolation of the north, they would have stood back to back, drawing swords to fight to the bitter, noble end.
But the Shattered Veil prophecy is a heavy, corrupting weight.
They have realized that if they die here, the world ends anyway. Therefore, their survival is the paramount moral imperative.
Even if it supersedes the lives of the pirate defenders.
Exactly. It is the absolute lesser of two evils, pragmatism. The demon is chaotic, yes. It is a temporary bloody diversion.
But it buys them the 5, maybe 10 minutes they need to haul Zora across the perilous, crumbling lava ledges.
And slip through the hidden tunnels back to the clandestine Wave Guild hideout.
It is the ultimate manifestation of dirtying your hands to save the world. I mean, they literally leave a demonic apocalypse at the party, lock the door behind them, and sneak out the back.
Pretty much.
It is staggering to think about the screams echoing through those halls as they limp away in the dark.
It is the burden of the prophecy marked. They are no longer pristine adventurers. They are combat pragmatists making brutal, damning calculations.
Man. So, while the main party finally collapses into the ash-choked shadows of the Wave Guild hideout, falling into a desperate, comatose state of recovery, the Chronicles do not let us rest.
No, the night is far from over.
I want to take you, our listener, away from the volcanic heat of Ashwillow and transport you to another theater of war happening at the exact same hour.
A simultaneous crisis.
We are shifting our gaze deep into the lawless peaks of the Fire Islands. Imagine a different kind of oppressive environment.
Not the manufactured heat of a pirate forge.
Right, but the raw, subterranean fury of the basalt hollows. The air here is thick with sulfur, and the rocks themselves bleed magma. Here, the dragonborn warrior Azuriel is being hunted.
And his predator is not a mortal man.
No, he is being stalked by a monolithic fire giant, completely encased in heavy plate armor.
To set the context here, Azuriel's presence in the Fire Islands was supposed to be a sacred, isolated journey.
Oh, that's right. The notes from his character background reveal that he ventured into this hostile environment to complete a rite of passage.
A solitary test of his martial prowess and spiritual fortitude. But the test has utterly broken him. We really must look at the physiological state of a dragonborn pushed beyond their limits.
Because dragonborn are naturally resistant to certain elements, but a fire giant is the embodiment of elemental destruction.
Exactly.
The Chronicles paint a grim picture. Azuriel is bruised to the bone. He is bleeding sluggishly from dozens of wounds. His body is operating at less than a quarter of its natural strength.
And most devastatingly, his magnificent twin swords,
his signature weapons, right? The very tools of his martial identity. They are either lost in the dark tunnels or shattered entirely. He has been backed into a dead-end cavern, gripping nothing but a severely notched, mundane hand axe.
Picture the psychological terror of that moment. Azuriel is a predator by lineage, a proud warrior. Now he is reduced to the role of prey.
Yeah.
He is standing in the suffocating heat of a basalt dead end, listening to the thunderous, rhythmic, earth-shaking footsteps of an armored giant echoing down the tunnel toward him.
Just boom, boom, boom.
The giant's plate armor scrapes against the stone walls, throwing sparks in the dark. Azuriel knows that a single swing of the giant's weapon will turn him into a smear on the cavern wall.
But the beauty of the Chronicles is that help arrives in the most unexpected forms. He is not alone. This is where the story introduces the NPC rescue party.
And the mechanics of this rescue are absolutely fascinating.
Because it eschews traditional heroic tropes entirely. First, we have the arrival of Howl the Bard. Now, I need to frame who Howl is. Up until this point, Howl's has essentially been a war correspondent.
He is a traveling chronicler.
He literally wears a magical earring that whispers rumors to him, telling him where significant historical events are going to happen so he can stand on the sidelines, take notes, and write epic sea shanties about them for 15 gold pieces a pop.
He is an observer.
But here, he steps into the firing line, and he doesn't try to wrestle the giant. He uses pure, theatrical acoustic manipulation. Explain what Howl does in these hollows.
Well, Howl leverages the very environment that is trapping Azuriel. A basalt cavern is highly reflective of sound and light.
Okay, so it's echoey.
Very much so. Howl casts a complex illusion. To the giant's eyes, he makes it appear as though the solid stone wall has simply shifted, swallowing Azuriel entirely.
Just poof, gone.
But optical illusions are easily broken by physical interaction. The true genius lies in the auditory component, using a technique of acoustic displacement throwing his voices. Howl mimics the frantic, distinct clicking sound of dragonborn claws scurrying rapidly down a completely divergent empty tunnel.
Oh, that's brilliant. He is using the cavern's acoustics like a massive amplifier. He bounces the sound waves off the volcanic glass to create a phantom prey.
Exactly. It is a masterclass in sensory misdirection. A fire giant relies on brute force and momentum.
Right.
When presented with the sudden disappearance of its target and the distinct auditory cue of the prey fleeing in another direction, the giant pauses. Its cognitive processing stutters for just a fraction of a second as it tries to reconcile the conflicting sensory data.
And that split-second stutter is all the opening the actual killers of the rescue party need. This brings us to Kolkita, the avian race swordsman.
Yes, Kolkita.
I want to dive deep into her combat methodology because it provides such a stark contrast to the apocalyptic warfare we just witnessed with the main party in the Iron Crown.
It really does.
The main party survive through terminal bursts and summoning greater demons, room-clearing, catastrophic magic. Kolkita uses terrifying surgical biomechanics.
Precision over power.
The notes say she whispers a vow, casts a spell called Hunter's Mark, and utilizes a technique known as Colossus Slayer. Break these terms down for us. What is actually happening in the physical space?
We must move away from viewing these as mere game mechanics and look at the martial philosophy behind them. Hunter's Mark is not a glowing target painted on the enemy.
Right, it's not a video game radical.
It is a hyper-focusing of Kolkita's arcane and biological senses. By whispering the vow, she links her predatory instincts to the giant's life force. She can suddenly smell the giant's heartbeat.
Whoa.
She can perceive the micro-movements of its musculature beneath the heavy plate armor. It allows her to identify the exact structural weaknesses in a creature 10 times her size.
And Colossus Slayer. How does a creature as light and hollow-boned as an avian warrior damage an armored behemoth?
Through the weaponization of kinetic physics and anatomy, imagine the sheer weight of a fire giant in heavy armor.
It's massive.
The tendons in its ankles have to be as thick as ship mooring cables just to support the creature's gait. Colossus Slayer isn't about hitting the giant harder, it's about hitting it where its own mass becomes a liability.
So she uses its weight against it.
Exactly. Kolkita blurs forward across the uneven basalt floor with aerodynamic perfection. She doesn't raise her blade to block the giant's massive strikes that would shatter her arms instantly.
Of course.
Instead, she relies on localized punishing speed.
She darts inside the giant's reach.
Yes, she enters the dead zone of the giant's swing radius. While the giant is distracted by Howl's acoustic illusion, she slides in, targets the exact vulnerability identified by her hunter's mark, and slashes the giant's calves,
Boy, she's severing the vital tendons.
crippling its mobility and bleeding it out from the base.
Yeah.
Before the giant can roar in pain and bring its massive, cumbersome weapons crashing down upon her, she seamlessly slips backward, melting into the subterranean gloom.
It is a choreography of evasion and vital point severing.
Supported by Tucker the Ranger, who is firing arrows from the high ground to constantly divert the giant's eyeline.
It is a battle of 1,000 tiny, mathematically calculated cuts meant to fell a mountain. But I want to make sure we don't romanticize this encounter. The victory was not a clean, flawless dance.
No battle with a giant ever is.
You can't put yourselves in a cage with a wounded apex predator and not expect a desperate thrashing. The records show the cost of this rescue was unimaginably high. Jebediah, the barbarian of the rescue party, and Kolkita both miscalculate at some point in the melee.
They take massive, crushing hits from the giant.
We are talking about the kind of kinetic transfer that shatters ribs and ruptures organs. Both of them are knocked completely unconscious, thrown to the cavern floor, bleeding out and requiring immediate medical stabilization just to prevent death.
It reinforces the brutal reality of the Fire Islands. There are no easy victories against the elemental forces of this world. Every foot of ground, every life saved is paid for in massive blood loss and broken bone.
But here is the question that fascinates me about this entire sequence. Let's look back at Howl the Bard.
Right, the chronicler.
As we established, he is a man who makes his living writing songs about heroes. He observes, he records. Yet here, he actively steps into the fire to manipulate the battlefield. He changes the history instead of just writing it down.
It's a huge moment for him.
What does this profound shift in behavior tell us about the creeping, pervasive influence of the Shattered Veil prophecy on the ordinary folk of this realm?
It is a brilliant sociological shift. The prophecy of the Shattered Veil is not just a burden placed upon the chosen few with the glowing marks.
Oh.
It is a gravitational force pulling the entire world out of its assigned societal roles. The existential threat of Gormak's apocalypse is dissolving the luxury of neutrality.
Howl realizes, on a fundamental level, that if he simply stands by and takes notes while Azuriel is crushed, the giant will eventually turn on him.
And more broadly, if Gormak wins, there won't be a world left to sing songs about, nor anyone left to pay him 15 gold for them.
True.
The rescue of Azuriel proves that the Chosen Ones are not isolated in their struggle. A desperate, pragmatic alliance is being forged in the fires of necessity. The boundary between the observer and the participant has completely collapsed.
It is the ultimate all-hands-on-deck realization. The apocalypse comes for the poets just as surely as it comes for the paladins.
Very well said.
So, with Azuriel battered but safe in the hollows, the sun finally breaches the horizon over the volcanic peaks of Ashwillow. But the dawn brings absolutely no peace. Let us leave the Fire Islands and transition our tale back to the cramped, ash-smelling confines of the Wave Guild hideout.
Back to our main party.
The main party, Welsies, Atenemis, Aaron, Zora, and Bip, finally awaken from their desperate healing rest. But the world they wake up to has completely changed overnight.
The scene greeting them in the clandestine hideout is one of sheer frantic panic.
Complete chaos.
The Wave Guild, a hardened syndicate of smugglers and thieves, is abandoning ship. Operatives are frantically packing gear, destroying ledgers, and shoving each other through magical escape portals.
The criminal underworld, usually a bastion of cool-headed opportunism, is in full flight.
Right. And Aaron, the ranger, who is likely sitting in the corner restringing his bow, smugly looks up and asks the guild leader, a man named Rick, what all the commotion outside is about.
And Rick just stops, turns, and glares at him. It's this incredibly thick, tense silence where it becomes crystal clear that the criminal underworld knows exactly who is responsible for the chaos.
They know the party assassinated the hand of Gormak and unleashed a ravening demon into the Iron Crown.
We must analyze the massive geopolitical fallout of the party's actions from the night before. By killing the hand of Gormak, the party didn't just eliminate an enemy combatant.
No, they decapitated the ruling government of Ashwillow.
The hand was acting as the de facto apex predator, the iron fist that kept the disparate, violent pirate factions in a state of terrified compliance.
By removing him so suddenly, the party created an instantaneous, massive power vacuum.
And nature abhors a vacuum, and pirate politics abhors it even more violently.
Precisely. Ashwillow has immediately fractured into 7 distinct, highly contested districts. Without the hand to enforce order, ruthless local warlords, ambitious pirate captains, and fanatical Gormak cultists have all poured into the streets, sparking mob-scale warfare for control of the city's resources.
The party thought they were performing a surgical strike against a demonic general, but in reality, they inadvertently sparked a catastrophic civil war.
They pulled the load-bearing pillar out of the city's societal structure, and the roof is currently collapsing on everyone.
But right in the middle of this grim realization, as the sounds of slaughter echo down from the streets above, the chronicles introduce a moment of absolute baffling levity.
I love this part.
A small magical portal opens up right there in the dusty hideout, and little smooth stones drop through the tear in space, landing in the laps of the heroes. This is a new long-distance communication spell, crafted by Debbie the Elf Wizard.
Now remember, Debbie is miles and miles away. She is currently safe in the maritime hub of Port Zarford, likely in a kitchen, baking. The items are a variation of classic sending stones. But because Debbie's arcane identity is inextricably linked to her familial history and her passion for culinary arts, her magic never manifests as sterile, generic artifacts.
No, it's definitely not.
These stones have a magical timer etched on one side and the vivid image of a yellow banana on the other.
But banana?
They hold 10 uses for instantaneous long-distance telepathy. But the unique flaw in the spell's design is tied to the timer. If the user fails to manually count down the timer after a message, the magical banana slowly begins to physically rot, emitting the pungent smell of decaying fruit.
Okay, I need you to justify this for me. Why a banana? I mean, of all the ways to anchor a complex interspatial communication spell, why would a wizard tether a critical tactical device to the decay rate of tropical produce?
It sounds crazy, I know.
Imagine holding a rock that smells like an overripe fruit basket, while heavily armed pirates are slaughtering each other on the ceiling above you, and your paladin is still wiping demon ash off his armor. It is utterly absurd. Does a whimsical baker-themed magic trick like this actually have a place in a high-stakes apocalyptic war?
It is exactly what is required in an apocalyptic war. You are looking at the stones merely as a communication tool, but you must look at them as a psychological anchor.
Okay, explain that.
Magic in this realm is shaped by the mental framework of the caster. Debbie's magic is nurturing, it is tied to sustenance and home. When soldiers are deployed in the most horrific, mind-breaking theaters of war, what is the one thing that maintains their sanity?
Letters from home. The taste of a familiar meal.
Exactly. The banana stones are a brilliant juxtaposition of the mundane and the horrific.
So it's not just a joke, it's a tether.
It is a vital tether to their humanity. We noted earlier how the prophecy is forcing these people into new, brutal roles, turning them into cold pragmatists willing to summon demons.
Right, the moral degradation.
The banana stones act as a sudden, olfactory reminder that personal identity, mundane comforts, family heritage, the simple, beautiful act of baking still exists in the world.
It reminds the party why they're fighting.
Yes, they aren't just biological weapons swinging swords in the dark. They are people with friends who care enough to weave complex magic just to send them a quirky, fruit-scented lifeline. It grounds their minds, preventing them from completely dissociating into the trauma of the Civil War.
That is a profound way to look at a rotting piece of fruit. I mean, armed with their new communication devices, the party makes a tactical decision. Atenemus steps up and uses his formidable charisma to negotiate with Rick, convincing the terrified guild leader to hold the escape portal open until the end of the day.
The party needs time to gather some things before they flee the city.
They leave Zora, who is still physically recovering from the near-lethal trauma of the terminal burst, and Bip the rogue behind to guard their only route of escape.
And the remaining trio, Atenemus the warlock, Aaron the ranger, and Welsies the paladin, draw their weapons, step out of the hidden trapdoor, and walk directly into the blood-soaked, screaming streets of Ashwillow.
And this brings us to a masterclass in urban combat logistics. This is not a dungeon crawl where enemies wait patiently in rooms. This is the fluid, unpredictable chaos of a city tearing itself apart.
Let's paint the picture for the traveler at the fire. The streets of the volcanic city are choking with sulfur and the black smoke of burning buildings. The ringing of steel against iron is deafening.
Ashwillow has been fractured into 7 combat zones. In each zone, the heroes are faced with a dynamic choice. Do they attempt to move quietly through the periphery of the riots? Do they engage the warring pirate factions head-on? Or do they take advantage of the chaos to loot the abandoned storefronts of the merchant districts?
And the way they choose to engage reveals an astonishing evolution in their group tactics. Let's start with Welsies.
The paladin enters Zone 1, and he doesn't just charge in swinging his axe. He brings in heavy, spectral artillery. Walk me through this. How does a paladin conjure a siege weapon?
Welce's actions in Zone 1 perfectly encapsulate the psychology of his specific divine oath, the Oath of Vengeance. Prior to this, Welces had constructed a physical cart back in the city of Coral Barrow, upon which he mounted a literal ship's rail cannon.
A real cannon.
Through the channeling of his divine magic, he summons his spectral steed, a manifestation of his holy will, and hitches it to this devastating piece of engineering. He brings a naval weapon into a dense urban melee.
But explain the physics of firing a naval cannon in a narrow alleyway. It sounds like a recipe for sheer indiscriminate slaughter.
It is. A ship's rail cannon is designed to tear through oak hulls at a distance. When fired at ground level in a confined stone street, the concussive force alone is enough to rupture the eardrums of anyone within a 50-foot radius. The grape shot, or solid iron projectile, turns the cobblestones into lethal secondary shrapnel. The area of effect damage instantly decimates the front lines of both the city forces and the fanatical Gormak supporters.
It is a terrifying display of overwhelming force that immediately draws the enraged, unified aggression of the surviving local warlord and his retinue directly onto Welces.
Which plunges the paladin into the absolute thickest, bloodiest part of the fighting.
I have to ask, how does this align with the concept of a holy warrior? He is firing cannonballs into a chaotic riot.
You must view it through the lens of Hanseath's dogma and Welces' personal trauma. For Welces, the equation is terrifyingly simple. The forces supporting Gormak represent the end of all existence.
Therefore, any collateral damage inflicted on the pirate factions in the pursuit of annihilating the cultists is mathematically acceptable.
He is acting as a divine punisher. The cannon is merely an extension of his wrath.
A localized apocalypse to fight a global one. But then, as the trio pushes deeper into the city and enters Zone 6, Aaron the Ranger employs a completely different, almost suicidal approach to battlefield control.
Aaron surveys the chaotic, warring mobs. He realizes the combat focus of the rioters is fractured and disorganized.
So instead of climbing to a rooftop and picking off targets with his bow like a traditional survivalist, he steps into the open street, pulls out a set of magical bagpipes, and begins to play a rousing, piercing, wailing skirl.
His intent is to draw the mob's collective aggression directly onto himself.
I need you to explain this to me because it sounds like madness. A ranger is not a heavily armored tank. He is wearing leather. How does a man survive acting as a human lure for a horde of angry pirates?
It is an extreme form of psychological provocation, utilizing acoustic dominance. Aaron understands the physiology of a mob. In a riot, combatants are running on pure adrenaline, reacting to the loudest, most aggressive stimuli.
The specific dissonant frequencies of the magical bagpipes cut through the din of clashing swords.
It triggers an involuntary, aggressive reflex in the surrounding pirates. Aaron is purposefully centralizing the chaotic threat.
So he is using his own fragile body and the piercing wail of the pipes as a magnet. He pulls all the enemies into a tight cluster.
Precisely, and this is where we see the brilliance of their evolved group choreography. Aaron uses acoustic taunts to herd the enemies into a specific kill zone.
Once the mob is tightly clustered around the fragile ranger,
Welces, who is immune to the psychological effects of the pipes, charges in and utilizes his heavy area-clearing smites and spectral artillery to annihilate the clustered forces. They are treating the battlefield like a fluid puzzle.
it's a deadly orchestrated dance, which brings us to the third member of the trio. While Welces and Aaron are bleeding, screaming, and holding the bloody line in the meat grinders of Zone 1 and Zone 6, what is Tenemus the Warlock doing?
He is in the relatively abandoned, wealthy merchant's quarter of Zone 2, calmly digging through the wreckage. He is looting.
He finds a finely crafted brass spyglass worth 100 gold pieces.
It is the ultimate display of detachment. But it also speaks to a profound, unspoken trust within the unit. The world is burning, the end of days is upon them, but the Warlock recognizes that survival tomorrow requires capital today.
Welces and Aaron trust Tenemus to gather the resources and intelligence that will aid their overarching long-term quest, even if it means he isn't swinging a blade beside them in the mud at that exact second.
And that pragmatic trust pays off almost immediately, because it is through the lenses of that very looted spyglass that the Warlock peers through the choking smoke and ash of the city to spot their next major objective.
He sees the crashed-in, reinforced iron doors of a massive prison keep. And as they regroup, Aaron, with his ranger's hearing, catches fragments of battlefield chatter from the dying pirates. They are talking about a noble pirate queen who is locked in the dungeons inside that keep.
The lore identifies this figure as Toxana. She is a towering, heavily muscled Goliath barbarian, but more importantly, she represents the former royalty of this pirate city. She's a legendary figure known to rule the underworld with an ethos of an iron fist but fair.
Which introduces a fascinating and frankly bizarre moral calculus. I want our traveler at the fire to really ponder this scenario. You are a band of heroes marked by the cosmos to stop the demonic apocalypse. Your time is running out.
Why in the world would you risk your lives, expend your precious magical resources, and break into a burning, heavily fortified prison just to free a pirate warlord?
Especially considering Wellesley's background. The Paladin has a deep, personal, generational hatred for pirates. His family's history was marred by the atrocities of Admiral Jack Windbeard. Yet here he is, organizing a prison break for a pirate queen. How does he justify swallowing that trauma?
He justifies it through the lens of sheer, terrifying geopolitical necessity. Wellesley's hatred for pirates is profound, yes, but the looming cosmic threat of the demon Gormak forces the alignment of incredibly strange bedfellows.
The party has realized the fatal flaw in their numbers. 5 heroes, no matter how powerful, cannot fight a global war against abyssal armies alone. They need an army of their own.
Toxana is not just a combatant. She is a political symbol. She is a royal military figure who possesses the ingrained authority to command and unite the fractured, chaotic, seafaring factions of Ashwillow.
She can turn a disorganized riot into a focused anti-cultist militia. Freeing her is a strategic imperative that simply overrides the Paladin's personal vendettas.
So they execute the breach. They coordinate a brutal surgical strike from behind the active fighting lines at the prison gates.
They reinforce the surviving, overwhelmed cell block guards, push into the dungeon depths, and break Toxana out of her heavy iron cell. And the interaction that immediately follows the jailbreak is one of my favorite moments in the Chronicles.
It is a clash of absolute ideologies.
Wellesley, ever the devout paladin, stands before this massive Goliath and solemnly tries to explain the cosmic weight of their mission. He tells her about the Shattered Veil prophecy.
He speaks of the end of days, the alignment of the stars, the demonic threat threatening to consume the mortal plane. He's offering her a place in a holy crusade.
And Toxana's reaction is a masterclass in grounded realism. She listens to this heavily armored dwarf preach about the cosmos, and she lets out a booming, derisive laugh that echoes off the dungeon walls.
She completely dismisses him.
So the paladin drops the end of days cosmic horror on her, and she basically tells him to touch grass. Why doesn't she care?
Because the apocalypse is a luxury problem for philosophers when your house is currently on fire. Toxana looks at these prophecy-marked heroes and literally calls their ancient cosmic lore the senseless wailing of crying babies.
To a mortal warlord whose city is being torn apart by street gangs today, the threat of the stars falling tomorrow is irrelevant.
She doesn't care about the metaphysics of the heavens. She cares about the blood on her streets. She snaps the shattered lock of her cell, rallies the surviving hardened prisoners around her, and declares that she's going to take her city back with brute, overwhelming physical force.
I love the friction of that moment. You have the party so weighed down by visions and destiny and the literal purple glow of magic on their skin that they have almost forgotten what it feels like to just fight for a piece of dirt.
Toxana serves as the perfect narrative foil. She grounds them. She reminds them that saving the abstract world has to start with saving the physical city you are currently standing in.
But she isn't entirely ungrateful, is she?
No. While she rejects their cosmic reasoning, she deeply respects their martial strength and their audacity in freeing her. She makes a pact. She promises to share something of vital worth regarding their precious prophecy, but only after the city is cleared of the cultist filth.
She effectively weaponizes the party's quest, pointing them like a loaded gun at her own enemies.
And she acts as the vanguard of a hurricane. Toxana and her freed prisoners become a wave of destruction, clearing the path ahead of the party.
Our heroes find themselves following in her bloody wake, stepping out of the prison district and entering the wealthy, commercial heart of the city, the Merchant's Quarter. Because Toxana's wrath has drawn all the living combatants away, the sector is eerily quiet.
The storehouses, the opulent docks, and the counting offices are completely silent, abandoned, and ripe for the taking.
Which leads us to the final act of this morning's chaos, the ultimate scavenger hunt. Let's delve into the spoils of chaos, because the items they extract from this quarter are deeply symbolic.
Indeed, the artifacts claimed here are not merely random trinkets rolled on a loot table. They are physical manifestations of the character's internal psychologies and distinct foreshadowing for the harrowing journey ahead.
Let us examine the acquisitions. We'll start with Aaron. The ranger scours the warehouses and uncovers three fascinating items. He finds a sleek, shimmering cloak designed to mimic the hydrodynamics of a manta ray.
He finds a thick, potent potion of giant strength.
And lastly, he discovers a mesmerizing, intricately crafted, animated ship inside a glass bottle, perfectly rocking on a phantom tide of enclosed water.
Each item serves a specific narrative function. The potion of giant strength speaks to Aaron's physical insecurity. As a human ranger fighting alongside paladins and magic users, his biology is constantly pushed to the breaking point, as we saw after the terminal burst.
He desperately needs physical augmentation.
But the ship in a bottle is the most evocative piece. It directly reflects the maritime geography of Port Zarford and Ashwillow. In the study of arcane symbolism, finding a trapped, miniature vessel heavily hints that the party's future escapes, or perhaps their final confrontation, will require complex naval travel or even dimensional sailing.
It is a literal manifestation of the seafaring journey they are bound by fate to undertake. A compelling theory. Now, Wellesley's discoveries in the offices are equally potent. He uncovers a perfectly balanced +2 dagger.
Now, let's explain what that means physically. A +2 weapon isn't just sharp. It is forged with such metallurgical perfection and arcane alignment that the blade is practically frictionless. It slices through the space between air molecules before it even touches flesh.
Beside the dagger, he finds a portable hole, a dangerous piece of canvas that acts as a tear into an extra-dimensional space. But the most intriguing item he pockets is a sealed parchment invitation to a highly exclusive, secret underworld auction.
The portable hole is the perfect utility for Wellesley's specific brand of justice. For a Punisher who leaves a trail of bodies, an extra-dimensional space is a terrifying tool for bypassing vault barriers or hiding the gruesome evidence of his holy wrath.
But you are correct. The auction invitation is the true prize of the morning. It suggests a fundamental shift in the nature of their conflict. Their war against Gormak has, until now, been fought with axes, arrows, and explosive magic.
The invitation implies that their next critical battle will not take place on a muddy battlefield, but in a shadowed room fought with gold, subterfuge, and high-stakes underworld politics.
Which brings us, finally, to the crown jewel of the looting. Atenimus the Warlock, ever the opportunist, claims a polished silver ring of evasion and a length of animated rope.
But then, hidden deep in a secure vault, he finds a prototype weapon. It is described as a heavy, highly volatile, portable cannon.
I need to pause here because the chronicles are very specific about the engineering of this device. It is erratic. The arcane firing mechanism is unstable. It is mathematically just as likely to suffer a catastrophic backfire and blow up in the Warlock's face as it is to successfully decimate his enemies.
Now let's look at the psychology of the man holding this weapon. Atenimus has a known gambling habit. He is bound to a lesser demon patron who actively revels in chaos and has, in the past, subtly pushed him toward decisions that endanger his allies.
Giving a man with that psychological profile a literal loose cannon seems like a recipe for absolute unmitigated disaster.
It is the pinnacle of dramatic irony. Whether guided by fate, the strange humor of the universe, or the subtle manipulations of his demonic patron, handing an unstable weapon of mass destruction to the party's most morally flexible risk-taker is a terrifying development.
It is the physical manifestation of Atenimus's internal conflict. Every time he chooses to pull that trigger, he won't just be aiming at the enemy, he will be rolling the dice with his own life and the lives of every single friend standing beside him.
It weaponizes his gambling addiction.
It is terrifying, and it is a perfect note on which to conclude the events of this bloody morning. Let's gently step back from the burning, ash-choked streets of Ashwillow, leave the pirate factions to their slaughter, and return to the quiet warmth of our campfire.
Look at the massive tectonic shifts in the landscape we've witnessed tonight through these chronicles.
A gargantuan demonic general shattered into purple dust by the raw overload of a sorcerer's mind. A battered dragonborn ally, pulled back from the brink of death in the suffocating heat of the basalt hollows by the acoustic trickery of a bard and the surgical precision of an avian blade.
A volcanic metropolis thrown into absolute gangland civil war. A pirate queen unleashed from her chains, dismissing the cosmos to reclaim her bloody streets.
And a quiet, tense moment of looting that armed our prophecy-marked heroes with artifacts of immense, world-altering, and highly unstable power.
They have survived the fall of the Iron Crown, yes, but the end of days clock has not stopped its relentless ticking. It has merely advanced.
The heroes are armed, they are wealthy, and they are marked by a destiny they cannot outrun. But as the Chronicles have shown us tonight, the survival demanded by the prophecy requires a heavy toll paid in blood and moral compromise.
And that leaves us with a lingering provocative thought for you to ponder in the dark as our fire burns down to embers.
Consider that sealed parchment invitation to the secret underworld auction, resting quietly in the paladin's pouch. Consider the erratic prototype cannon now slung heavily across the warlock's back.
In a world where the end of days is literally tearing the sky apart, where demons walk the fortress halls and pirate queens rule the ash, what kind of unimaginable reality-bending artifacts are being bought and sold in the shadows of that auction?
And when a Tenemus is finally forced, either by the whispered commands of his demonic patron or the sheer, terrifying desperation of a losing battle, to pull the trigger on that unstable cannon, who will be standing in front of the barrel and who will be standing behind it?
Safe travels, my friend. May your fire stay warm against the encroaching dark, and may your path stay clear of the shadows.
We'll see you next time as we continue our descent into the Chronicle of the Shattered Veil.